If you have opened an energy bill recently and thought, how is this legal under a price cap? You are not imagining things. The government tells you the price cap protects you from unfair energy bills. Ofgem says it keeps prices as low as possible. Your energy company sends you letters saying they are legally required to follow it. But here is what nobody is telling you. The price cap does not cap your prices. It never did. And the people who designed it knew that from the start. I'm going to show you exactly how this system works, who profits from it, and why millions of British households are paying far more than they should. If you have seen your energy bills double or triple in the past few years and wondered how that is possible under a price cap, you need to hear this. Let us start with what the price cap actually is, because the name itself is the first lie. When you hear the phrase price cap, you think there is a maximum amount you can be charged for energy. That is wrong. The cap does not limit what you pay. It limits what suppliers can charge per unit of energy, and only if you are on a standard variable tariff. Right now, the price cap is set at £1,738 per year for a typical household. That sounds like a cap. Here is the problem. That figure assumes you use exactly the average amount of energy. If you use more, which most families do during winter, you pay more. If you have a larger home, you pay more. If you work from home, you pay more. There is no cap on your bill. Let me give you a real example. I spoke to a retired couple in Yorkshire last month. Their energy bill hit £2,400 last winter. They called their supplier, confused about how they could be charged so much over the cap. The customer service representative told them they were not over the cap because the cap only applies to the unit rate, not the total bill. Think about that for a second. A price cap that does not cap your price. The couple had assumed, like millions of others, that £1,738 was the maximum they could possibly pay. This is not a misunderstanding. It is how the system was designed. The price cap protects energy companies more than it protects you. Here is how we got here. Before 2019, energy companies could charge whatever they wanted on standard tariffs. People who never switched suppliers, usually older customers or those who did not understand the market, paid the highest rates. These were known as sticky customers in internal company documents. They were the most profitable because they never left. The government promised to fix this. Theresa May announced the price cap in 2017, calling it protection for families. Ofgem introduced the cap in January 2019. At the time, it was set at £1,137 per year for typical use. Energy companies complained, but quietly, because they knew something the public did not. The cap was never going to stay low. It's reviewed every 3 months, and it's based on wholesale energy costs. When those costs go up, the cap goes up. There is no limit to how high it can rise. Between October 2021 and January 2023, the cap increased by 215%. That is not a cap. That is a price tracking system that follows the market and guarantees suppliers their profit margin. And this is where most people stop listening, because this next part sounds technical. But it is the part that explains why your bills exploded. Ofgem sets the cap using a formula that includes wholesale costs, network costs, policy costs, operating costs, and a built-in profit margin. That margin is allowed at about £65 per customer per year. It sounds reasonable until you realise that is protected profit, even when suppliers are struggling to retain customers during a cost of living crisis. So if you strip away the jargon, here is what is happening. When wholesale prices go up, you pay more. When prices go down, the margin built into the system protects companies first. In 2022, when wholesale gas prices exploded, the cap shot up to £3,549. Households across the UK faced bills they could not afford. Food bank usage increased by 32%. Charities reported people choosing between heating and eating. And yet energy suppliers still made their protected profit margin on every standard tariff customer. You might be thinking, but did not some energy companies go bust during that period? Yes, they did. 29 suppliers collapsed between 2021 and 2022. But here is what is rarely mentioned. Most of those companies failed because they offered fixed-rate deals below the cap and could not sustain them when wholesale costs rose. The companies that stuck to standard variable tariffs, the ones protected by the cap's built-in margin, survived just fine. British Gas, the UK's largest energy supplier, reported operating profits of £969 million in 2023. EDF Energy made £1.1 billion. These profits came during the worst cost of living crisis in decades, while their customers struggled to pay bills that had tripled. The price cap did not prevent those profits. It enabled them. And that's the part you are not supposed to connect. Now let's talk about what you are actually paying for, because most people have no idea how much of their bill has nothing to do with actual energy. About 23% goes to network charges, maintaining the pipes and wires. About 8% covers policy costs, like green energy subsidies and the warm home discount. Operating costs, billing and customer service are about 10%. The actual energy you use is only about 42% of what you pay. The rest goes to profit margins, VAT and other charges. You're paying for a system, not just electricity and gas. And the price cap guarantees that the system gets funded no matter what. Here is something that makes this even worse. If you're on a prepayment meter, you paid more for years. Prepayment customers, who are typically the poorest households, paid higher rates than direct debit customers until 2023. Ofgem knew about this. Energy companies justified it by saying prepayment meters cost more to operate. But the real reason was simpler. People on prepayment meters are often in debt or have poor credit. They have fewer options. They cannot easily switch suppliers, so companies charge them more because they could. The system was designed to extract more from the most vulnerable for over a decade, and the price cap did nothing to stop it until public pressure forced the change. You might be wondering, what about fixed-rate tariffs? Cannot you just switch to a cheaper deal? This is where the cap's real damage becomes clear. Because the cap exists, energy companies have little incentive to offer competitive fixed deals. Why would they? They have millions of sticky customers on standard tariffs who are guaranteed to pay whatever the cap allows. Before the cap existed, suppliers competed aggressively for customers with cheap fixed deals. Switching saved you money. Now the cap has become the baseline, and most fixed tariffs sit above it. You are told the cap protects you, but it has actually removed the competitive pressure that used to keep prices down. Let me show you exactly what I mean. In November 2024, the cap was set at £1,738 for typical use. I checked the switching sites. The cheapest fixed deal available was £1,842. You could lock in a rate for a year, but you would pay more than the cap. Most people looked at that and stayed put. That is exactly what energy companies want. The government claims the cap has saved consumers £100 billion since 2019. That figure comes from comparing the cap to what prices would have been without it, based on pre-cap standard tariff rates. But that assumes suppliers would have kept raising standard tariff prices at the same rate if the cap did not exist. It assumes no competition, no switching, no market pressure. It is a made-up comparison designed to justify a failed policy. Here is what actually happened. The cap set a price floor, not a ceiling. It told energy companies exactly how much they could charge, and they all charged that amount. Before the cap, different suppliers had different standard rates. There was variation, some competition. Now everyone charges at or near the cap level. It homogenized the market and removed any reason to offer better deals. And who designed this system? Ofgem, the regulator that is supposed to protect consumers. But Ofgem is also responsible for ensuring energy suppliers remain financially stable. That is a conflict of interest built into their mandate. When you are tasked with protecting both consumers and suppliers, you end up protecting the companies because they are the ones you regulate directly. Consumers just pay the bills. Ofgem's board includes people with backgrounds in energy companies and finance. The current chair, Tim Jarvis, previously worked in investment banking. I am not claiming corruption. This is standard regulatory practice, but it has real consequences. The people setting the cap have connections to the people benefiting from it. Now here is the part that should make you angry. You cannot escape the cap unless you actively work to find a better deal, And even then, your options are limited. Energy companies can game the system in ways you cannot. They can hedge their wholesale costs, locking in lower prices months in advance. They can shift costs between their retail and generation arms if they are vertically integrated. They can use the cap as a guaranteed revenue stream while telling shareholders they are financially secure. Meanwhile, you are sitting at home watching your direct debit go up every few months, wondering why the cap is not protecting you. It's because it was never designed to. So what can you actually do? First, understand that the price cap is not your friend. Do not assume you are getting a fair deal just because you are paying the capped rate. Check switching sites every few months. Yes, fixed deals are often more expensive now, but occasionally there are competitive offers, especially from smaller suppliers trying to gain market share. Second, reduce your usage if you can. The cap does not limit your bill, it limits the unit rate. If you use less energy, you pay less. Insulation, turning down thermostats, and using appliances during off-peak hours if you're on a time-of-use tariff, all of this makes a difference when the cap is not protecting you. Third, challenge standing charges. Standing charges are daily fees you pay just for being connected to the grid, regardless of usage. They have increased dramatically in recent years, and they are part of what is covered by the cap. Some suppliers charge over 50 pence per day. That is £182 per year before you have used a single unit of energy. If enough people complain to Ofgem about rising standing charges, there is pressure to review them. And finally, make noise. The price cap exists because of political pressure. It can be changed the same way. If you have been hit with massive bills despite the so-called protection, tell your MP. Write to Ofgem. The system works this way because most people do not understand it and do not complain. The energy price cap is one of the most successful pieces of propaganda in recent UK policy. It sounds like protection. It feels like the government did something, but in reality, it is a mechanism that protects energy company margins while tracking wholesale costs, and you will always pay whatever those costs demand. The most expensive mistake people make with energy is not using too much. It is trusting a system that was never designed to protect them. If you are still assuming the cap is protecting you, you are doing exactly what this system relies on, trusting a label instead of checking the reality. Have you been caught out by the price cap myth? Drop a comment below and tell me how your bills have changed over the past few years. If this opened your eyes to how the system really works, subscribe. I will keep explaining what nobody else explains properly.